Hey everybody, it's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Heidi from Dark Sarah. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. So the newest album is Grim, which is scheduled to come out July 17th of this year. Was there like a certain idea revolving around the making of this album? Was there a specific goal? How was the making of Grim, to simply ask?
Yeah, I started writing material for this album already 2 years ago. So I kind of started then and ended up when we were going to studio with the new material. Not the studio, but starting the production phase. And so I think that the first songs I wrote, they were more like in the mood of the Chronicles, the first three albums. And then the end of the phase, the songwriting phase, they started to become something quite new and sounding quite new. So I think that this album is kind of a transition album in many ways. It's also in music ways and also story ways. So I think it's a good way to kind of introduce the new sound of Dark Sarah, a new storyline to our audience.
So this isn't just like a continuation of what we heard on the Golden Moth. This is like a new start in a way for Dark Sarah.
Yes, exactly. So that I kind of needed that at this point of Dark Sarah's career. But they are connected, Dark Sarah and the new protagonist Luna. So that we're going to find out soon.
You mentioned that you were working on the material for Grimm for like a period of 2 years. Is what we're hearing on the album how it was originally written, or was there kind of like a lot of changes between when you first wrote it to now?
Actually, for this album, I have to say that the songs didn't change much. But of course, there has been additions and something that we wanted to change. Maybe with different songs, we kind of used a different part of different demo and kind of build up songs like that from my demoing phase. But I think that they have been more like they were on my table
Hmm.
than ever before. So I think that this is completely a new thing for me to be able to write music so far that it can be also already put on the album. But of course, our producer Mikko Mustonen, he is a wizard in creating soundscapes, and he also arranges the songs for our band. So in that way, I don't take all the credit for this album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I've noticed is that like from listening to this album with a song like My Name Is Luna from versus like a song like Ice Heart or a song like The Hex, I felt like every song really had many different emotions feeling through it. Like, is it like I know that your albums are very conceptually driven, but is there any also personal elements invested into Dark Sarah as well?
Uh, Not in that way that it's always it always is connected to the story, and I want to kind of create that kind of emotions that the protagonist or the guests or everybody who is singing on the album kind of feels like in the story. So in that way, they are not my feelings or anything like that. But of course, because I'm kind of creating everything those characters myself, so there has to be something like which is reflecting my own ideas and my mindscape and so on. So of course, there's something that is related to me too.
Yeah. Well, obviously, like when you have an album that's so concept driven, like it obviously determines the lyrics. Would you say that maybe the stories that are portrayed in the album also determine the music too?
Yes, and it's a quite tricky thing to create a concept and also think about how the track list, because it has to have this kind of musical fluent you know forward going, and that's something that you have to also think about besides the storyline and so on. So everything stays quite open until the last point of the making the album. So it's like I write the write some kind of a synopsis of the story, and then we start making the music, and then we kind of put them in the right order. And then I write the final story for the album. So it can also change to the last point. So and then that's why I also like to write my final lyrics and also the story in the really late phase of the making of the album.
Yeah. Do you feel like maybe that the Dark Sarah catalog is almost like a movie series? Like people should not, listen to the puzzle until they listen to Behind the Black Veil, or people should not listen to the Golden Moth before they heard the two albums before that? Are your albums kind of like Lord of the Rings in a way?
In a way, yes, of course, but of course, it's music. You can listen to music without knowing anything about the story, and that's what I also wanted to kind of have. So it's not so restricted to knowing what you are listening to. So they can be taken away from the concept. But of course, if you want to dig in deeper and get the full idea of Dark Sarah, I think it's recommendable to do that. To start from the first album and read the storybook from our website, and then continue to this new era, but also you can start from, if you have never heard Dark Sarah before, this is completely a new storyline which starts from here, so it's easy to start also from here too, so you don't need to know anything else.
Yeah, it seems like your story is very easy for people to catch on to, but the music is also open to interpretation as well.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, there's lots of different kind of, how do you say?
Metaphors?
Yes, thank you. I sometimes lose my English, but it's just like that. So there's lots of hidden things. You can always go and Google things, and you can find that. For example, why there is Garmr is the name of the wolf, and if you go to Google it, you know that it's a guardian dog of the underworld, and also a lot of things like that. So it's not completely fictional. Of course, fictional in that way, but historical too. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of your live shows, and from looking at the photo shoots of the band, do you almost feel like that for Dark Sarah, you guys actually portray the characters that are in this story as well?
Yes, and I think that the visual aspect is really, really important when we are making cinematic metal, and also we want to create kind of the mood, like it's like in the making of a movie. You need to kind of also you need to have the kind of the music there, and also the plot, and then the characters, and also the scenery. And here we only have few photos and few music videos that we can kind of create the same thing, the mood and the visuals. So that's why they're really important, that they kind of nail it. Yeah, but then it's really important. Yeah.
Being that these albums always thrive around a story, but you mentioned like you come up with the story after the music is. I'm curious to how you decide like what order the songs go into, or how do you listen to a song knowing this has to be the first song, this has to be the last song?
Actually, I do have the synopsis, kind of the basics of the storyline in my mind when I start writing the music. And of course, I know some kind of things that I already start writing to. I feel that this would be a good, music for when the wolf and Luna meet. And that kind of, I kind of have this kind of ideas, but then when we start kind of pick up the right songs for the track list, then I kind of write the complete story. Mm-hmm. Then, yeah, it's a little bit tricky to do that, but yeah.
Because, from what you're telling me, like, a listener shouldn't listen to Grimm, or any of your albums for that matter, on shuffle. They should always listen to the song. Like, with Grimm, they should start off with My Name is Luna and end with The Dark Throne. They shouldn't, approach it from any certain other angle, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's of course you get the best idea. What's the thing, and I think that people should also read the Grim Poems book that I wrote next to this album to kind of get to deepen the story and the idea of it. So it opens much more than the lyrics can. So I think if you are interested you can seek it from this kind of digital bookstores on the 17th of July.
Awesome. One thing that I was actually curious about, kind of going into the history of Dark Sarah, was this something that you have always wanted to do since the formation of the band? Was it always, let's make our albums much story driven, or did this idea just kind of happen as you started first writing with the band?
Exactly, it just happened. I was writing the first lyrics for Dark Sarah, and I didn't even have the band name yet. We were just really starting to make the first demo, and what kind of band this would be, and everything was open. So it was Save Me, the song that I was writing the lyrics to, and there was this woman in her wedding dress walking in the woods and singing quite happily in a really melancholic song. Overall, it's singing happily, Save Me. And then I was like, what has happened to her? Why is she there? And I kind of started like, writing more about her. And I came up with the idea of this Sarah character, and Sarah actually means princess. I think it's an old ancient name that means princess. So I thought that Dark Princess would be a quite good name for this character. Yeah, so it just kind of started from there. And when I was writing the first album, I didn't know it was going to be a trilogy. But on the second album, it was clear it was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah, and like I'd imagine that even though like you're writing these stories and it's entirely fiction, and we kind of talked about this before, but it is an idea coming from you. Is there any like personal experiences or anything happening in the world around you that could ultimately have influenced the writing for this, or is just these stories and the music just a complete escape from reality?
Now that I look back to the first trilogy, I see a lot of things and my own feelings and what I have been going through in my personal life. I've never been left on the altar though, but still everybody has had this kind of misery in relationships and so on. I wanted to kind of write something else that I always write, fantasy, but the whole trilogy became to be a fantasy story anyway, so with dragons and all, so I just couldn't do it. But of course the character has a lot to do with my own feelings, of course. Yeah.
So I'd imagine that like maybe if people who would like to get to know you as an artist and as an individual, like maybe they could have a better understanding of who you are as well if they just simply listened to the album and read the books and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that they really need to dig through that and interpretate, what could this mean in Heidi's eyes? What has happened to her? Of course, it's mostly fictional, but of course, I've lived enough, to know what kind of, things you can have when you're in love, and there's romance and there's heartache and there's deceit and a lot of things that we can all relate to.
Yeah, I had a discussion with a writer one time, and he actually said to me that there is no such thing as fiction because it is still coming from you and it's coming from your own mind.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's really true, because even though you are creating a lot of different kind of characters, they're just parts of your own personality, and you just have to kind of know yourself good enough so you are able to write different kind of characters.
Definitely. I got a couple more questions for you, but in order to like get inspired to write, for that creative energy to flow through, like, do you almost kind of have to isolate yourselves? Do you find it easier to kind of like write and create music when you're more like in your own element in a way, or does inspiration just come out of the blue sometimes?
inspiration can come. It just pop. Things just pop in my head. It like the puzzle album, the title, where I normally start from making the next album from the title. So it just. I was sitting on a sofa and suddenly I got this idea. I have no idea where it came from, but it's just like that. Sometimes they just pop in my head. But of course, when you're writing more about the story, you need to really concentrate and think it through enough so that it builds a really nice world. And I actually love building up the new worlds that we have on every album and the visuals of them, and I use a lot of Pinterest pages actually, where I gather a lot of visual material for myself too, that when I start writing the songs, I look at the pictures and I imagine myself there, and also what kind of mood then the song would need, and so and for this album especially, where there was these orb songs, where these magical power obstacles, so I wanted them to be really energetic, because of course they are magical. Yeah.
Definitely. And with being that like Dark Sarah is kind of like your own vision, is it almost kind of like a different mind frame than all the work that you've done, with artists such as Amberian Dawn, or your guest appearances with other bands in a way? Like, would you say that you probably have like the most creative independence with Dark Sarah?
Definitely, because I was just a singer in Amberian Dawn. Not just a singer, I also wrote the lyrics, but still, it was just part of the business. And now that I can start from the scratch on my own, and then I take people into this songwriting process, and it's in my hands all the time what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is the most difficult question for the whole interview. How do you know when a song is done?
Yeah, but that's why maybe I couldn't and wouldn't do that. That's why I have a producer. Yes, and that's why it's really, really important in Dark Sarah to have a producer who kind of, I build up the kind of the skeleton of the song, and then we have Mikko who has been with us from the very start, and he is, like I said, he's a sound wizard, and he can create everything that I want. So he's a gift from heaven to me, and it has been really lovely to work with him, and he knows Dark Sarah from cover to cover. We've been talking about a lot with all the story stuff and so on. So that's the reason why I have a producer who knows when the song is ready. And of course, sometimes I said that we could make changes and so on. So it's good to have like partners in this stuff, business.
Definitely, especially with My Name Is Luna being 2 minutes, The Chosen One being 5.5 minutes, Melancholia being 6.5 minutes. There's a variety of different song lengths on this album as well.
Yes, but now My Name Is Luna is kind of the intro to this album, and we wanted it to be like that. We didn't want to make it like a complete song. So like on our last album from the Chronicles, and there's also an intro song. So we thought that it's a good thing to kind of create the mood. It's like a teaser to the album. This is the world that we are in now. So listen carefully.
There's so many albums that, like, upon listening to them, I feel like predicted the dire times that we are living in now, and I think Grimm is one of them.
Yeah, yes, nice to hear that, because I didn't know anything about the world situation when I was writing this album, but I kind of have had the feeling that we all need to have this kind of escape from reality without this dark times or anything, just from your normal day routines. Can you hear me, by the way? Because my dog is barking.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, good. Because yeah, so yeah, it's a good thing to have this kind of escapes from your normal life when you can just sit down and listen and imagine and use your imagination to build up the story.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that this album is going to be a good way to, represent the times that we're living in, but also be an escape from the times that we're living in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you were saying it. Represents also these times, and there's a lot of messages. I didn't meant them to be there, but when the story was ready, I also noticed that it's when we're talking about Mörk, the monster, we all have our own monsters. They can be people, or they can be like obstacles that are between you and your dreams, and I think that Grimm is about finding your own inner strength and standing up for yourself and that kind of messages.
Yeah, it's like showing that the turmoil around us is not so different from the turmoil within. Or at least that could be my interpretation of it.
Yeah, what is the turmoil?
Yeah, of course. Talk about metal, though, being ahead of its time with all these albums that ultimately predicted the times that we're living in.
Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Obviously thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named. Obviously, shows are not happening, but I'd imagine when all this is over, and it will eventually be over, we'll be seeing Dark Sarah on the road quite a bit. Is there a chance you guys will be coming to the States eventually?
We would love to come, and I think that's something that we have been dreaming from the day one. And so far we have had really shortage of shows in other countries than Finland and Netherlands. But I'm hoping that with the new record label and hopefully people really like this new album, we can also start growing a little bit and also start touring.
Yeah, definitely. You're in great hands with Napalm Records. Huge shout out to everybody there.
Yeah, it feels like that, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Heidi of Dark Sarah. Grimm coming out July 17th via Napalm Records. Be sure to pick it up then. This is Alex in Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.